I believe many Americans are like me. They don't want to see any more Americans die in the Mideast. If we're going to prevent other American deaths in the Mideast and remove from the Mideast the chaos that currently exists, we have to have a national policy based on honesty. Both the President and the Secretary of State need to state things with honesty. They need to be truthful. The first thing they have to be truthful about is the true nature of Islam. They need to be willing to tell people throughout the Mideast that we view Islam as evil. Why is Islam evil? Because the major tenets of Islam are that it is acceptable to kill other people if they refuse to follow the religion of Islam. Really, we need to understand the history of Islam and the history of Mohammed. Since Mohammed was basically an evil warlord, probably the most evil man that ever existed, and since Islam teaches that Mohammed was the perfect example of human conduct, we can only expect from people who follow Islam chaos, evil, wickedness. What was Mohammed? Mohammed was a thief, a murderer, a rapist, a pedophile, a slave trader, a torturer, a terrorist. All manner of evil were engaged in by Mohammed with one purpose, and that purpose was to make Mohammed as rich and powerful as possible. Islam is about power achieved through force, and we need to resist that. Now, I realize that people will say, "Oh, that's so offensive to describe Islam in that way." Just because the truth is offensive does not mean that we shouldn't tell the truth. As a matter of fact, truth that is offensive is the most important truth to tell. We need to tell this truth through our elected officials to the entire world, especially the Muslim world. Now, I know people will protest. They'll say, well, how are we going to have these people as allies if we say such things about them? My response to them is, how well has it gone for us to have these people as allies? We have to understand that one of the most important doctrines of Islam is the doctrine of taqiyya. Taqiyya is sacred deception. Muhammad was a liar, and he taught his followers to always be liars to gain advantage over non-Muslims. So we have to understand that whatever a Muslim is telling us, they are lying. They say Islam is a religion of peace and tolerance. How can we possibly square that with 1,400 years of history? The history of the life of Muhammad himself, as well as what we see going on today. Groups like Boko Haram and ISIS are accurately following the teachings and practices of Muhammad. This is Islam. What you see being done by these groups is not a perversion of Islam. It is true and accurate Islam. So we cannot align ourselves with people that follow that religion and believe, teach, and practice that living a life patterned after Muhammad is a proper thing to do. You know, some people say, well, Islam can be reformed. Think about this. Islam has been reformed. Groups like ISIS have reformed Islam. It was sliding away from the true teachings and practices of Muhammad, but ISIS and other groups like it have taken Islam back to the true teachings of Muhammad. You cannot reform something that was evil and wicked from the start and turn it into something good. It cannot happen. What we need to do as a nation is we need to tell people the truth. The most important truth we can tell people is that the God who created the universe loved each and every one of us so much that he took on human form in the form of Jesus Christ, came to earth, performed life-changing miracles, and then was wrongfully accused of crimes and suffered and died a horrible death for our sins. And by accepting him, the one true God, we can have our sins forgiven. People should not pattern themselves after an evil man like Mohammed. They should pattern themselves after the perfect example of Jesus Christ, a man that never hurt any person and actually gave himself to be a sacrifice for others, you and I, who have done wrong. Unless we do that, we will never overcome Islamic terrorism. Our leaders tend to believe that secularism can replace Islamic terrorism. That will never happen. Only the true gospel of Jesus Christ can replace Islamic terrorism. Now, you say, well, if we don't have the Muslim nations as allies, who should we have as an ally? I believe the most important ally that the United States should have in the world today is the nation of Russia. People protest, oh, align ourselves with the evil empire? Well, now stop. Russia is no longer an atheistic communist nation. We aligned ourselves with Stalin during World War II to fight Hitler. I would suggest to you that the Russia of today under Putin is nothing like the Russia of Stalin. It's not a communist nation, and it is not an atheistic nation. As a matter of fact, Russia has a higher percentage of Christians than does the United States. We need to actively seek to make Russia our #1 ally. This foolish notion that the two powerful nations need to fight each other just to see who will be the most powerful is foolishness. I've written a book called God's Law, the Only Political Solution. And in that book, I argue that the only way that the United States can return to being a prosperous country, because we are clearly a nation in decline, is to return to obedience to God and his laws. And if you'd like information about that book, you can get it by emailing me at charlesrfuqua@gmail.com.